Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tradesman Experience. This is the podcast built by tradesmen for tradesmen. My name is Josh, and today's going to be a virtual conversation without our dear friend Nate Newton. And the guy that I have on the big screen, as him and I were just joking, on virtual today is it's a guy that I met in June of 2021, and I got an email one day, and he said, "Hey, I've been listening to the podcast religiously, and he was probably the first guy to ever find our podcast." And he said, "I've saved up enough money that I want to do an hour of coaching." So we scheduled an hour of coaching, and we spent our first hour together. That night, I get an email about all of the things that he's already implemented, the change in his mindset, and we schedule another appointment for about 2 weeks later, and we have another hour. And that involved into a year-long working relationship of the unlimited coaching, and the evolution that I've got to see not only with him as a person, as a father, new father, but as a business owner, has been one of the most impressive things that I've got to see in working with companies across the country. So I invited him to come onto the podcast because I kind of want him to share his story. Surprisingly, you've already heard this guy on the podcast once. If you go back to episode 103 titled "Implementation or Die," he was one of the guests when Nate ran that episode. So with that kind of introduction, I want to introduce my friend back on the show. This is the first time we've got to be on the show together. Is Garrett Daniels with R&D FabWorks. And Garrett, dude, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. I'm glad I don't have to talk to Nate this time.
Oh man, I can't wait till he hears you say that.
Me either.
So great. No, I'm gonna. Because you'll never do it, so I'm going to do this for you, and I'm going to brag on you a little bit to kind of jumpstart our conversation today. And I'm going to brag on the fact that when I work with companies and I work with leaders, whether they're business owners or not, in your case, you're business owner, single owner operator. Everything that we talk about and everything that I share in the training and the teaching all falls down on the implementation of the individual, and never by name, but I have bragged on you more than once in telling stories or sharing examples or working with other clients, because I will say this with conviction. I've never had another client be as deliberate, as systematic, and as intentional about growing themselves and their business as you. So that I'm gonna kick us off by bragging on you a little bit, but that's really why I wanted to have you on here, so we could kind of go through your story and share examples and wherever it goes. But man, when it comes to understanding something and putting the work in and generating a result, like, you're a fucking monster. And it's
I think the right word is a psycho. So what you're saying is the rest of your clients are normal humans.
Well, you know to be in the trade, you can't be that normal. And,
no, you can't.
I got off of a call yesterday, and almost every time I get off of a call, I'm like, God, dude, I love my clients. Like, my clients are badasses, and for them to actually get to the step where they want to work on developing themselves and growing themselves as leaders, it takes a special kind of person anyway. And it's like, man, so I'm gifted with the greatest job in the world, and I have the best clients possible. But I meant it when I said it. Like, you're the only client I've ever had that would send me basically an itinerary for our conversation. Every single behind me on the camera on the wall, you have your own folder, because everything you ever sent me is printed out, and it's in order in your folder. So
I'm surprised it fit in one folder.
no, I actually had to buy a 3-ring binder.
Oh, okay.
I had to buy a 3-ring binder. So, walk us through your story a little bit. And like I said, people they really kind of get a glimpse of you in episode 103. I really kind of want to dive into that. I don't know how long this conversation is going to take. I'm just looking forward to having it.
Yeah, me too.
But kind of walk us through your story of getting started, your first business, growing into your second business, and kind of what you've been doing along the way.
Right. Well, I am I'm kind of an exception to the rule in that I did not grow up in a trades family. My dad is actually a computer software engineer, and he is the CEO of a company that does telecommunications work up in this area, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois region. And I think they're about to go into Tennessee as well. But so my family's a very tech family, and I'm kind of the odd man out in the family. So I went through multiple years of college and multiple years of engineering internship and hated all of it. I did okay. If I would have enjoyed it, I would have done a lot better. But I got to a point where I was actually interning over in Florence at Robert Bosch Automotive Steering Systems, and the PE, the engineer I was working under, can't remember his real title, process engineer. He told me that if I continued to spend as much time as I was spending in the machine shop, that I was going to be fired. And he said that that I should probably consider looking into the trades, because he said you seem to be a guy who really enjoys this and understands the engineering enough to be able to communicate well with us, but you want to implement this stuff. He's like, you don't want to be sitting at the desk. And I realized he was right. So I went off and did welding school and went through a couple different jobs, worked at a plant, and then I worked at a job machine shop for a little while, and went, and as I was doing that, I was doing like Jeep stuff on the side. So I got into all the fab stuff. But aside from what Paul, my PE, told me, I was kind of doing it as a hobby anyway, with some of my buddies, and just building, custom bumpers and whatnot for our own stuff. And at the time, I was in charge of one of the bigger Jeep clubs in the area, and so I had a very captive client base at the time of several hundred people. So whenever they needed anything, I would just make it for them, and it was kind of a side job kind of deal. And that grew over the course of several years to the point where I was able to leave the machine shop I was working at and go and start to do that full time and really focus on that. I built a show rig. I was doing a big build for a client, and then I got one of those clients that everybody hates to have, the kind where when something goes wrong, there's no opportunity for fixing it. You can't compensate them properly for it, and they basically completely tarnished my reputation just online, because it's really easy to do these days. And there was some validity to the things that they said, but there was a lot of stuff that they said on top of it that was completely false, and I couldn't do anything about it. It's on Facebook. Mm-hmm. So I decided at that point, I was talking to another buddy who also did some business coaching at the time. This was before the tradesman experience even existed. I was talking to him about some different stuff with the business, because I hate working for people. I'm just not that kind of guy. And my the way that I work, it's just it doesn't work well with a 9-to-5 kind of position. Mm-hmm. I'm more suited for something that's different than that. And so I decided to get into, after several conversations, get into what I left, which was manufacturing. And this was 2019. So I launched R&D FabWorks in October 23rd of 2019, and then we got COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So for the first few months of owning the company, I was able to go door to door and knock on, actually walk up to companies and go do door to door sales. And I had no freaking clue what I was doing, but I knew that if I stood in front of somebody as at the time, 20, what year, 26-year-old, and showed them my work and actually stood there and had a conversation with them face to face, they could tell that I'm not your normal, 20-something-year-old
Mhm.
guy who just wants to sit behind his computer and message you on LinkedIn and talk over email and stuff. I would go in and, seek out specific people because I knew, I could do certain types of work for different companies. So depending on who it was, I'd go seek a maintenance manager or a process engineer or somebody like that. But the tactic was the same: just walk in and start talking to people, and try to make friendships. And I still do work for several companies that I met in the 3 months of 2019 that we had for free.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And then 2020 and all that crazy crap hit, and that was a really testing time. I had one decent client that kept me pretty busy, and I kind of stuck with them for a while and kind of let them dictate my schedule. But they were bringing me so much work, I kind of didn't care at the time, and I didn't know better than to not let that happen.
Mhm.
And when did the Tradesman Experience come out? That was January 2020, right?
That's correct.
I think I found you in like March, like February or March. There's a couple episodes. There weren't too many. It was a suggestion on iTunes, actually,
Gotcha.
because I was listening to all the MFCEO stuff. And so I started listening. I was like, yeah, these guys don't seem like idiots. So
I appreciate that fair evaluation.
yeah. And so I started to get some good actual trades advice, and I was like, man, I'd love to be able to actually talk to these guys, but despite having work, I was still broke because I was working for nothing, and did that up until basically the time that you and I started talking last year.
Mhm.
I I had a truck project I decided to allow to take up 4 months of my time.
It's a good way
And
to
at the
phrase
end of
that.
yeah, I mean, I had work during that period, but I wasn't actively seeking work, and it was. I mean, when we started working together, I was doing everything wrong, except the actual work.
Yeah. Well, and not to share sensitive information, but your revenue proved that.
Yeah, no kidding. I have no problem sharing. There was one month I made like $200 or something
Mhm.
stupid like that.
1 month,
One whole month.
like
One whole
one of your biggest months was like $6,000.
I think that was the biggest month I had ever had up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I was super pumped. I was so freaking excited.
And
like, by the way, for reference, I'm in Northern Kentucky, so we have
right.
it's a little bit more expensive than some other areas, but like you can live comfortably on 60 grand a year here and not really having problems. Now this year maybe it's a little bit different because of inflation and all that stuff, but normally 50, 60 grand is a really good salary.
Right.
And that's kind of the area that you're from too.
Exactly.
So getting 6 grand in a month, I was like, hell yeah! If I could do 10 more of those,
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about.
Except you didn't.
Except I didn't. I think up to that point, I was averaging about 2 grand a month.
Yeah.
Yearly.
But you were working all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
yeah.
The reason I say that is because that formula, it's like per hour, you were going backwards.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely backwards. I was working 40, 50 hours a week. And at most of the time, I was also working a second job
Hmm.
to keep the company going. So, and still making no money. And the big lesson that I learned from that is that it is what Andy Frisell says all the time. Knowledge is not power; it's applied knowledge. If you do not understand how to apply the knowledge, it's useless to you. So you should hire somebody who knows what the heck they're doing to teach you how to apply that.
Well, and it's, as we go through this conversation and we share real life examples, I want to remind people this is not a roast. This is so relatable, and I think so many people misunderstand what it really takes to start a business, what it really takes to grow a business, and what it really takes to evolve a business.
Yeah.
And whether you have all of the information or not, how are you applying it? And what's your long-term plan? What's your short-term plan? And we'll dive into that a little bit later, but it's so relatable that, because I think people just think that they can start a business and they're going to experience immediate success.
That's I don't know where that comes from, but that doesn't happen.
I think it comes from social media, to be honest, because social media doesn't show the work. It only shows the result. And so it gives this false sense of immediate success.
Right.
And, so people start a company and they're just like, oh, well, I own a business now. And it dictates their behavior because that's their narrative. Like, what?
Yeah, I'm big ballin'. I just signed my LLC into existence.
Yeah.
You've made $5, dude.
Yeah. And one of the things that I appreciated about you is that was never your mindset in our conversation. Like, you working hard was never the missing piece of the puzzle.
No, that's never a question.
No. And it's when you work 50 hours a week to generate $2,000 in revenue. And again, this isn't a roast, but we're talking about revenue, not income.
Yeah. Gross revenue.
Gross revenue.
Not net.
Again, it's just like you plug yourself and you're like, okay, well, if I do the work, I'll make the money. And that's also not true.
No.
There's so many variables and factors that play at that often guys like you and I in the skilled trades that build our identity around our craft, and then we go out in the market with only that identity and only that craft, we have an expectation and it's never met. And
you're going to get your teeth kicked in.
Exactly. And, so it results in failure, frustration, blaming, lack of accountability, closing the business, losing a bunch of money because you're like, well, I know how to do my job. And they're like, well, that's all you know how to do. So if
that's all you know how to do and you never learn how to do anything else, that's all you get to do.
That's it.
And you don't get to complain about
it. What a concept.
Right.
But you have to change your identity if you're going to become a business owner. And more importantly, whether you're owner or not, if you're going to become a leader and you're going to make decisions that influence your brand or the people that go out in your company and that are going to influence the market, like, you have to change your identity. You have to evolve and you have to grow that. So, my introduction, because, I think that first email you sent me is in your folder.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
And it wasn't like, it was just, it was kind of like, hey, I can breathe for the first time in 2 years, kind of thing. But here's one thing I want people to understand, what I really appreciated about it, and because a lot of people didn't do this, was the vulnerability, right? And if you're going to commit to investing in yourself and in growing and developing your team, you have to have a sense of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, this is where I'm at. There was no smoke and mirrors. There was no BS. It was like, hey,
there's no crying about it either.
No, not at all.
This is where I am. Flat, unemotional. Yep. Like, can you help me?
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, because you weren't playing the victim at all.
No,
it was just like, hey.
I'm pretty sure in that email, I said, I know I screwed this up. I don't know how to fix it.
And I was having a conversation last week. It's interesting to me how often we have to near the bottom before we make a turn.
Yeah.
And, you were there.
Mhm.
It was like, okay, either I'm going to have to do this or we're going to close this business down, kind of thing.
Oh, I'd been scraping the bottom for a while. There were sparks coming off. Dude,
man.
I had a $200 month.
Month.
And on top of that, we had a kid on the way.
Yes. Yes. Which I will brag a minute. I did get the opportunity to meet you in person and your wife and your daughter. And one of my trips back to the Midwest, I intentionally.
Back when I was fat, yeah.
Sympathy weight. I think they call it sympathy weight.
It's called excuses.
Yeah. Because that baby girl was brand new when I saw her.
Yeah, and she was still big.
Yeah. So I have got to meet you in person, and I have got to meet your family, and see your operation and stuff like that. So, it was just and that was really cool for me because I got to see it kind of after we had worked together for a while, and you had made these decisions. But talking about implementation, a little bit, as I stated earlier, when it comes to someone that really understood implementation, you were my best client at it. And by the way, you are currently not my client. I also want people to know that, like, you graduated out.
Yeah, we work together when we need to.
Yeah. You took everything that you and I worked together and what you developed in a year, and now it's like rinse, lather, repeat, right? It's implementation. And we'll get to some of the results that's created, but but understanding the importance of implementation, because within 2 weeks I think you had generated a couple $1,000s in revenue in the first 2 weeks that we worked together just by implementing.
Right. And then in addition to that, a contract, which afforded, I think it was close to 10 grand a month on top of that for several months, which I still do work for those guys, just not on site.
Gotcha.
Now I do all their actual production work. Like, I took all the production work that they were doing there, and they realized I could do it better and faster. So now I do all of it.
Right. Solving problems, right?
Yeah. Funny how that works when you can solve problems better than somebody else.
When I talk about implementation, I don't talk about getting up and just doing the work every day. Right. And, every single client I have, and I had a guy in California I was talking to last night. He was like, the work is the easiest part of this. So implementing the work itself, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, I believe people are really good at their craft. It's developing everything around that craft that allows you, that affords you the opportunity to have a business and go out into the marketplace. I'm sure you probably remember, I don't remember exactly where we started on implementation. I know sales was early on.
Yeah, that was pretty important really early.
It was really early.
Yeah.
That may have been where we started. I can't remember.
I think that was where we started, because without sales, we had no reason to have systems.
You clearly had no revenue coming in. So.
No, not at all. It was quick. I think that was one of the things we talked about in the first one and two conversations. And then we started talking about systems after that, because it went so well. Because I did what you told me to do. And I didn't question it.
I was like, all right, let me see if this actually works. Now, 6,000 was your biggest month, and it wasn't. It was a couple months before you went from 4-digit to 5-digit revenue.
Right.
It was fast because of the sales process. So let's talk about the sales process a little bit, because that's something that you still continue this day to again, to implement, right? Implementation kind of thing. So I always talk about, one, you have to understand the want or need of the client.
Mm-hmm.
And two, you have to develop that relationship.
Right.
So many people in the trades get wrapped up in the idea of telling their client what they think they need.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we go to build that relationship, we get wrapped up in telling them what we can do. Mm-hmm. So we never spend the time to build that relationship, to really understand the want or need of the client, and then developing option-based solutions.
Right.
And then presenting those option-based solutions in a format that allows you to inform and educate.
Mm-hmm.
And then the client decides what's best for them.
Right.
I'm not deciding what's best for them.
No.
And
it cracks me up because, so many of us start out thinking that, I don't want to do sales, or I'm not a salesy kind of guy. Well, are you a solutions guy? Like, can you actually solve people's problems? Because if you're not, then no, you're not a sales guy. But if you can create solutions to people's problems that will actually do for them what they want, then what they want to have done, you are a sales guy. And in fact, you're probably the most effective sales guy possible. And so with implementing sales, the stuff that we talk about, it's all simple, and you just talked about it. It's asking them, okay, what is happening, or what needs to be solved, and then as a follow up, okay, what suggestions do you have as for, what do you want to see happen? Like, how do you want this to function? And then you, as the sales or solutions creator, gets to go and make it work.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy. There's nothing difficult about this. If you're doing it like that, you're focused on the actual solution and getting them the best product or solution possible for that, whether it's you or not, by the way. There's been times where I've sent clients away because I didn't have the best solution for them. But if you're offering the best solution, you're going to get a sale. Now, you and I have talked about the different methods by which you can make sales and offer different, good, better, best packages, in what order, how you use the language and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But all that's secondary to, can you solve the problem and communicate that to the client?
Right.
That's all sales is.
That's it.
Here's a solution to your problem. Do you think that this is what you want, or do you want us to change it? And if you need to change it, okay, here's this, and this is what it costs.
And I think,
holy crap!
And I think a mistake that a lot of people make is they jump to the concluded solution without identifying and understanding the problem or the want or need.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They immediately jump into, well, this is what I can do for you. Like,
right.
Well, you don't even know if that's the best option for them or not, because you haven't.
They don't care either.
They don't. Absolutely
they don't care
not.
what you can do for them. They care about having their problem solved. They don't care if it's you or somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
They really don't.
No.
Do you care?
Right.
If you go to a car dealership and they can't give you what you want, if you go buy a brand new car, they can't give you all the options you want. Do you buy that? No.
Oh. You're not going to
go elsewhere.
Right. You're not going to leave the lot with something that you didn't want.
No. Exactly. And it's the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Except we're not trying to sleaze people into buying some piece of junk used car.
Well, and I think it's important to understand that when you take the approach of problem solving, mm-hmm. right? You're being a solutions creator, as you said. It takes the sales not out of the equation, but it's not the focal point.
Right.
So you don't feel like a sleazy salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
You're just there to understand the problem or the want or need of the client, mm-hmm. and then you create solutions that revolve around your skill set and ability.
Right.
And then you offer those to the client, and
That's
you
right.
allow them to decide. So, I'm not selling them anything.
No.
And whether that's whether you're in someone's home fixing their air conditioner,
Mhm.
or you're running a fabrication business, it's the same principle.
Right.
You just got to learn how to communicate better, right?
Mhm.
So part of our sales training is the 5 C's of business. Communicate, connect, create, commit, and consistent.
Yeah.
And applying those,
Mhm.
and that it really is a successful winning formula
Mhm.
to serving your client the best way possible.
That's right. And when you do that, the second and third order effects to that are, number one, your client is happy. That's your second order effect. And your third order effect is you are confident and you're happy that you were able to solve that problem in that manner for your client. You never feel bad about there's no guilt behind what you're doing, no matter what the price for the solution was, any of that stuff. Because I know, like, for me personally, when I first started, the reason why I was making $2,000-3,000 a month is because I didn't feel like what I was selling was worth more than that. I didn't understand what the value of good solutions was worth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, I didn't have the best tools and all that stuff, so yeah, I should have been on the lower end of the market value, but I was so far below that with all of that compounded that it was a side business that took up 40 hours a week and made no money. I would have been better off like trading stocks probably.
and losing at it.
And losing. Yeah, going to the racetrack and throwing
Yeah.
$100 down every weekend.
What was the turning point for you in understanding the importance of self-value, self-worth?
That's a long story. When I was in jail,
we're talking about the business, right? You
Right.
stated, you're like, you're making
Mhm.
peanuts a month, and
Right.
because you didn't understand the value.
Well, yes, but that turning point started several years prior.
Hmm.
It's like you and I know, like I had a DUI, so I spent a night in jail. What to do? But that was a turning point for me because I'd never been in an environment like that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I started just doing the self development stuff in general. But the big turning point for the business was realizing that I was going to have a kid, and um, realizing that there was absolutely no way that I was going to be able to support my family on the income that I was making, and also be a decent husband and a decent dad at the same time. Because when you're working 60, 80 hours a week, that's not possible. Because if you're not home, you don't have an opportunity to be a husband. You don't have an opportunity to be a dad. So it was, okay, make the business work so that you can make it work with your schedule, which, by the way, doesn't mean I work 20 hours a week.
Right.
That means that I get to dictate the hours that I'm working. I'm up 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning. I'm rolling, and my day's halfway done by like 11 o'clock because I've got all of the actual work done by then, for the most part. If I have a crappy day, I have to stay a little bit later. It is what it is. I'm like a 5 to 3:30 kind of guy right now. So like it's a consistent 10 and a half hours or so. But it's only 5 days a week. I get to, because of the position that we have gotten my company to, I don't have to work every Saturday. I have to work some Saturdays, but not all of them. In stretching season, I have to work Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, we're at a good pace. The company's making money. I'm making money. Like everything's flowing well, and we're in a transition period, getting ready to bring on a large sale that we're currently doing a prototype for that will pretty much force me to bring another guy on, which at that point it's stretching season for a little while. So we've got a 4-day vacation plan right before I know when that's going to happen, because then I know it'll be 6 days a week for probably 5-6 months, and that's fine, because probably by the end of that I'll have 2 guys working with me, and then I get to focus more on sales and making sure that the operations are running smooth. And then my identity changes. We talked about the identity thing. Like I'm not a fabricator. I'm a single owner operator at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking to be just a business owner in the near future. So the thing you have to look at with that, on top of just the way that you look at yourself, is what is required of me to become that person. And that's what you have to aim towards. So when you're doing your self-development stuff, you look at, okay, where do I want to be? What's the next step? No matter if it's 6 months down the road, 30 days down the road, 10 years down the road, what's that next hurdle that I'm trying to reach? You determine what that is, and then you consume content and apply the lessons that you learn that's related to that. It's the same thing that we do with business plans. Where do you want to be in 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
How do we work that back, scale it back to a week-to-week basis? It's the same exact thing. And it amazes me that people don't do it, honestly, because it's so effective. You decide, like you've said before, it's like a GPS. You determine where you are, where you want to be. Okay, how do I get there?
Mm-hmm.
What lessons do I need to learn to get there? Who is there who I can learn from to be able to get me closer? Maybe they can't get me all the way, but they can get me closer. And then when I get closer, maybe I pick up this other person and start going from there. Maybe learn some lessons from them.
Having the humility and self-awareness to recognize that you can't make that journey alone is so important.
Yeah.
And if there's one common thread with everybody that I work with, is they all feel like they're alone. They all feel like they're on this island by themselves.
Yeah.
And it's the farthest thing from the truth. The reality of it is most people put themselves on that island.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not having conversations. They're not surrounding themselves with people that they can have those conversations with. Or to your point, which I think is really important, is they're not seeking those people out.
Right.
They're not looking for that person that can help get them to that next stage, that next level,
Yeah.
Whether it is personal development or business growth, revenue generation, product development, whatever it is. They refuse to seek out because they have this self-imposed perception that they're the ones that has to do everything.
Right. And you can't.
and you can't. And the brilliance of that is you've been there, I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
We've both suffered from that severely.
Yeah.
And when it's not until you get out of that shell, not only do you start to understand your self-worth and your self-value, but charting the course becomes easier because you have people that are helping you.
Right. Yeah. They show you which direction to go, where the potholes are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I valued our coaching client relationship so much too, because when you get to talk to somebody who understands the situation you're in and sees it from an outside perspective, not as like someone who's like your family member or a friend or whatever, which we've become friends, obviously, but that's not how that relationship starts out. It's, it's a coach and a client. When you have someone coaching you, the really nice part about that and where the value comes in is that they see things you can't see. And that's why it's super important. Michael Jordan had his own coach. The case for, I don't understand why people don't want to have coaches in areas of their life that they're not, that they want to improve. I think the case for having a coach in an area that you need to improve is so easy to make.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you want to be the best at that or not? If you don't, then fine, don't get a coach.
Right.
But if you do, you should probably look at it. And for the situation that I was in, for the stuff that we were doing, you're the best coach I could ask for.
It was, my goal is to get everyone to outgrow me. And
right.
So I was the right person, the right fit at the right time, period.
Yeah.
I think you should have a coach. Whether it's me, whether it doesn't matter who it is, you should have someone.
Yeah.
Because it is impossible for an individual to go to the 30,000-foot view by themselves. They
Right.
can't do it. You can
Mhm.
get to 5,000 feet. You can maybe get to 10 if you're really
Right.
strategic and really good.
Mhm.
But it takes that outside perspective to bring you up to that 30,000 feet and go, okay, how many different areas is your company firing?
Mhm.
And are they moving? Or is your company stagnant? Is there growth? Are you going backwards? Like, to really get up to that 30,000-foot view and be able to observe everything, including yourself, right? Because
Right.
it's the 30,000-foot view is a little bit of an out of body type, perception. It's like,
Yeah.
you're going to actually look at yourself too,
Mhm.
and the decisions that you're making strategically, tactically, stupidly, whatever it is. It's like
Most of them are stupid when you start, by the way.
so many. And but you really need someone next to you to get you up to that, that elevation, to be able to start to truly evaluate and understand where you are and where you're going.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's
And you go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and that's like that's one of my responsibilities as a coach, is to bring people up to that and detach from the emotion, detach from themselves, and really
Mhm.
look and go, okay, let's analyze and evaluate yourself and your business.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, from another great coach. I mean, have you finished Relentless yet?
Hmm.
Okay, good. I was gonna give you one if you had
Oh yeah,
finished a 120-page book and
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but something that Tim Grover talks about a lot. I kind of lost my train of thought. Dang it.
You were just
Um,
you had started off saying there was another coach, and I assumed you were
well,
going to talk about
it was
Tim.
obviously Tim.
Yeah,
What were we just talking about? My God.
30,000-foot view and evaluating and
Yeah,
looking at
yeah,
your
it's
business and
gone.
stuff. That's all right. Happens to me too all the time.
I was gonna say something that was really great and profound, but it went away.
You know what? I'll take your word that it was great and
Yeah,
profound.
it was good. That was what I was gonna interrupt you for, but yeah, whatever.
Oh man, I want to circle back a little bit,
Yeah.
because it's relevant when you understand what your self worth and self value is.
Mhm.
The idea of sales becomes easier.
Yeah, yeah, and that can break down to as simple as what is the market value for the services I'm
Mhm.
performing, and that's it. Like if you shop around and you figure out what your standard market value is, if you think that your quality and your service is equal to or greater than everybody else's, you should have no problem charging what everybody else
Mhm.
charges. Nothing at all. And that's what it took for me, is realizing, okay, the standard market value in my area is $80 to $150 an hour, depending on the type of work that you do, the quality of the work. So I found where I fit in that. And right now it's still on like the bottom end, because a lot of the higher stuff is like CNC machine work, and that's not really what I'm in. Like
Mhm.
the stuff that I'm doing, like, well, actually, no, that's not true. I do some higher end work, and it's all install stuff, and that is at the top end. So I just lied. But it depends on what you're doing.
Right.
The value of what you're providing. What's the standard market value in your area?
Mhm.
If you're doing good quality work, you're treating your clients better. You should be treating your clients better than everybody else. By the way, if you're not, you're screwing up. That's, you guys talked about being the best customer. Well, you should be the best vendor.
Mhm.
Okay, on top of being the best customer. Um, which I love that episode too. That was right out of my book. But if you're providing a service that's equal to or greater than everybody else's, you should have no problem with charging standard or above market value. You really shouldn't. And by the way, you should be paying your people above that as
Mhm.
well if you're charging that, because they deserve it, because they're also doing that same work.
Mhm.
It's not you by yourself at the top of your company by yourself, and you have little minions doing all your work. It's not how it works. If you have a team, it's a team. If you're doing better work than everybody else in your area and you're charging more for that, everybody else inside of your team also deserves that. And I know you guys talk about that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 100% true. And that's an easy way to keep the right people around too, especially with the crazy economic times that we're in right now, is, being able to afford to pay people well. So, maybe you should, if you're not at the upper end of the market value for where you are, maybe consider looking into what you can do to increase your quality or your customer service so you can be up at the top end, so that you're not down here on the ground grinding it out and suffering. Because unfortunately, in a recession, those are the guys who really suffer. Is the guys who they're there to cut costs. They're there to be the bottom dollar guy, and I understand it. That was obviously what I struggled with for a really long time. But you don't want to be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not that guy to start with. So I don't know that we really even need to worry about talking about that. But
well,
you should aim to be the highest quality, best customer service, whatever you do in your area.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the best on the planet, but you should at least be the best in your area.
In your market. Well, your point on paying, if you expect more, you're expected to pay more.
Absolutely.
And
I don't know where
very
people
simple
get
principle.
away with not doing that either.
I don't either. And, in this current market right now, people are complaining, well, I can't find people. I've got too much work and not enough people. Well, that's a leadership problem.
Mm-hmm. You're either not paying enough or you suck to work for. Or both.
Exactly. Because if you had both of those checked, right, if you were good to work for, meaning you had a healthy culture, you create opportunity, and you have the foresight of operating a business, and you pay above standard market value, you will attract good people, because there's another business doing what you're doing where there's a high performer that hates where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't know about you. They just don't know that you exist. And if you have someone that leaves a shop in an industry and goes to another shop in the same industry, they left the leader or the culture. They didn't quit the job. They if they're in the same industry, they just made a lateral move because you suck to work for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's really interesting, because people have a hard time articulating their expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get frustrated at people when they don't meet them. I'm like, well, again, that goes back to being a poor leader.
Right. Yeah. And a poor communicator, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is one of the C's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, so that's why you have to develop yourself to be able to develop your business.
Right.
Something I know you've heard me say probably 100 times is your business is a direct reflection of you. So
absolutely,
what you're good at is what your business is good at. If you're really good at your craft, your business can do the work.
Yeah.
But if you're not good at communication, you're not good at sales, you're not good at finances, you're not good at marketing, your business isn't going to be good at those things.
No, it won't. And as you grow, like I've noticed me personally, I've become better at communicating and sales and the other side of it than I am at the trade. Like, specifically the guy that I'm looking at hiring, he's better than me at the trade, and that's okay.
Yeah. What a blessing.
I realized that actually last week. I was thinking about that and talking to my wife. I'm like, you know what? I think he's actually better than me at the work.
Mm-hmm.
And I want that because that's going to allow me to lean on him to be able to help me grow my company.
Yep.
And he'll be rewarded handsomely for that, of course. I mean, at the place he is, which, by the way, they suck to work for. I won't mention their name.
Yeah, let's not do that.
They're one of my clients, but they're not fun to work for. Traditional, old company, large, bad communication. He's getting paid what he's worth at that point, or at that place. If all he was doing was fab work, he's doing 3 other jobs on top of that. So I'm looking forward to bringing him in and getting him in a good mood and seeing how well he does. Because I've seen what he does when he hates his job, and he still does a great job.
Yeah. I love that point, because you can and I use words like culture and cultivate a lot uh, when I'm speaking to people, but it's really true. You can cultivate performance out of people.
That's right.
At the end of the day, they either have it or they don't, and I agree with that. What I disagree with is people expect other people to be. They expect everyone to be a self-starter,
No.
even if they're
You know how
not.
rare that is.
Yes, even if they're not, they expect everyone to be a self-starter, and
Right.
and it's one of the flaws of chicken shit leadership is you just expect your people. So let's say you are a high performer, you just naturally expect your people to perform like you. You expect them to be self-starters and self-performers. A good leader is going to cultivate that out of people, and they're going to put them in a culture that cultivates that out of them. They're going to provide them with leadership, support, resources, tools, training, and opportunity that cultivates that out of people.
Right.
And you have to do that constantly. You can't cultivate high performance out of somebody once and expect that to hold. It's a forever game.
Yeah.
And people
right.
are going to have bad days, they're going to have bad weeks, they're going to have bad months. But the true test of a leader is being able to course correct those situations, to stay the course for the long game and continue to support people when they need it, let people perform when they need it, give them
Right.
trust, give them responsibility. And true high performers don't want to be micromanaged. They
Right.
want to know what is expected of them. So they want very clear expectations. They
Right.
want very clear targets, because they want to know what they need to meet. And then you don't have to tell those people how to get there. You just get out of their way.
Yeah.
And you let them do what they do. Just give them the support that they need to get there. But everybody doesn't work that way. And there's a lot of times something rattles around in my brain for sometimes months at a time before I put it out on the podcast. And one of those topics right now is first, second, or third. Not everybody is meant to be a number one.
Right.
Not everybody is even meant to be a number two. And again, I think that's a flaw of chicken shit leadership, is they want everyone to perform like a number one, but also not participate in decision making as a number one.
Yeah.
And I know some of the best high performers that I know are an amazing number two, an amazing number three.
Right.
They're an awful number one. I'm thinking about one of the guys I know right now. Like he was in a number one position in this business, and he was just he was not good at it.
Yeah. Well, and a statistic that I hear all the time, it's probably from Andy Frisella. I think he said 7% of people are true entrepreneurs, like have that drive. You have what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and 1% of them succeed. That means that 93% of people are a number two or number three, and that's fine because you're in the vast majority of people. And if you're in that 7%, in the 99% of 7, so whatever the heck that ends up being, 6.7% that fail, you're probably an excellent number two. Probably. Or you're going to be a good owner operator.
Right.
One of those two things. And tell you what, man, something that's a little bit off topic, but related, that we've talked about a lot is hiring the right people. I think that it takes a very calculated and introspective perspective to look at and determine what you need as far as who you need to hire first. And I know we've had that conversation multiple times of, well, okay, like, so personal example, I need someone to replace me in the business doing the functions of actual fab work and operating machinery so that I can do more sales, and hop between the two, because there's going to be a transition period where I have to be partially in the business and partially on the business. Well, I've picked the wrong guy twice. Two in a row. And one of them has a wonderful nickname.
Yeah. And here's what I love about the first, because the second one, you and I were
both disappointed.
We were disappointed. That one took a turn that neither one of us saw.
Right.
The first one makes me laugh because regardless of the training, you just decided to go ahead and do it the way you wanted to do it. And, and it was it was beautiful.
That was one of the hardest learned lessons I've had. Nobody listened to anybody for that 30 days.
No, and
I didn't listen to you. He didn't listen to me.
Right.
He didn't learn how to read a measuring tape or a square.
More than once have I worked with people and been working with them when they go to hire someone, and they ignore the hiring process, they ignore the onboarding process, and the result, most of the time, the result is the same as what you experienced.
That's right. And like I did the hiring process okay, especially for the first time. It was the onboarding that I did really bad. Because as a high performer, I don't like to be micromanaged, so I don't like to micromanage other people either.
Yeah.
I think it's freaking annoying. So the guy that I'm bringing on that we've been talking about, I don't need to micromanage him. I'm going to have to show him, how the operations of the company work and how we behave in certain situations and that kind of stuff. But as far as getting the work done, I know he's better than me, or at least as good. So I don't have to micromanage any of that crap. I'll just show him where all the parts are, and here's your cutoff wheels, here's the saw blades. I'll have to teach him how to run the plasma table, but what do you do?
You get fortunate enough that occasionally you attract an individual like that.
That's right.
One of my other clients, I had the good fortune of a meet and greet of their newest hire, who is going to be in a very high leadership position of this company. And I spent 20 minutes with the individual. And when I left that meeting, I went and told the owner, I said, I don't need to spend any more time with him. He's good. I mean, this guy is a monster.
Yeah, you can just tell.
Yep. And I was like, so the time that you're affording me to work in your company, we don't need to spend it on him. He was like, okay.
Yeah. And I'm sure he appreciated that too.
And because I mean, this guy is just one of those guys that when you attract him, it's a game changer of the whole company.
Right. He's that catalyst.
Yes. And the guy that you're going to bring on is, I believe, is the same way. Is going to be that catalyst.
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
Because if he's not, I'm going to beat it. For lying to me.
But
he'll end up under the new shop.
Well, Nate and I were talking about it. Nick is that catalyst, at their company. He's the one that's prodding and he's a mover and a shaker. He gets things done. And every company could be lucky enough to have a catalyst. Now, that doesn't mean that you yourself cannot be that catalyst. You can be that catalyst,
sure,
right? But not every leader is a catalyst leader. And that's a topic that we've never dove into. But not every leader is a catalyst leader.
Right.
So it takes a very, very special kind of person to check that box. And like I said, you could be lucky enough to attract someone, or if you're really, really good, you become that individual.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about that growth of the company and you bringing him on, because he's also an individual that you and I have talked about since day one.
Yeah. This was been a year and a half.
But
Shoot, I've
yeah.
been talking to him for a year about bringing him on,
Right.
and the timing just hasn't been right.
Of course. But you've had that clarity the whole time with him.
Right, right. And in addition to that, I know this is something we want to talk about as well. We may as well get started. That's the long game.
Right.
Okay. 'Cause that's something we brought up before we started talking. In order to do all of this properly and have part of the right mindset is understanding what the long game actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about the quick success stuff on social media. First off, if it's quick success, it's going to be a quick failure. It's the same as a dating relationship or any of that other stuff. If you succeed quickly, your longevity is going to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
My goal, personally, is to be in a position at retirement age to where I've built the company that I want. I'm going to be able to do the things that I want to do, have the house and property that I want, have the team that I want, have the company culture that I want, and be able to just sit back and be the encourager until I die,
Mm-hmm.
basically. Like I'll wither away in the office kind of thing with other people running my company and me just keeping up with making sure that the culture is where it is, that people are getting taken care of and all that kind of stuff. Like that's what I want. And that's a 40, 50-year goal. That's not 10 years from now. Now, 10 years from now, is it going to look completely different from what it is right now? Absolutely. Is it going to look way better? I sure hope so. But that's long term.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we get caught up in thinking that long term is next year. A year ain't a long time.
Right.
It's really not.
10 years in business is not a long time.
No. I mean, I've known you for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
That feels like it's been a month.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. I've been with my wife. We started dating over 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that time gone?
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like yesterday. I was in freaking high school, and it's been over 10 years, which is disgusting to me.
Yeah.
I know for you, it's been 130.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
we barely had school. It was all in one little schoolhouse.
Yeah, it was a little schoolhouse
out in the country.
Force.
Yeah. there's a saying, and I'm sure I'll screw it up, but it says that most people overestimate what they can do in 10 years and underestimate what they can do in a year. And I think in business, that's
backwards.
Is it backwards? I can never remember if it's backwards or not. They overestimate what they can do in see. That's why I said I'll screw it up.
Overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10.
See, I knew I'd screw it up, as I always do.
It's okay. I got your back, man.
Got me. So what he said.
Yeah.
People get into business and they don't understand the long game, and it's so it's misunderstood, it's undervalued, and it's not even talked about anymore to have a 40-year goal.
No,
because
and we fell into that trap multiple times as well, thinking that something was going to happen in a certain amount of time. But I feel like that was more because we were excited because of all the movement that we were seeing.
Mm-hmm.
The company was gaining momentum, and we were thinking, this specific thing, if this big job comes in, we'll be able to do this, and it should be on this timeline. And it was like really short every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And those are circumstances that are out of your hands. Like I have over $1 million in jobs right now that I don't have on my dock because I'm waiting for approval.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if all those show up, I don't know what I'm going to do.
What a great problem to have.
I'll be calling Josh as well.
So what are we looking at here?
Right. Right. Remember that 1 week thing we talked about a while back?
You used the word momentum, and I appreciate that you did, because momentum is like those mirrors at the carnival. They either make you look really skinny or really fat.
Really fat.
Momentum creates distortion of reality. I don't care if it's positive or negative. It creates distortion of reality. Momentum will make you feel like you're doing a lot better than you are. And if you don't have it, it makes you feel like you're doing a lot worse than you really are. And yes, we got wrapped up in that excitement and the momentum.
And it's easy to do.
Very easy
really
to
easy
do.
And we understand long-term goals.
Yes. Yeah. So somebody that just is kind of playing moment to moment gets overly excited about that momentum and then makes really poor decisions, really poor strategic decisions that can cost the company, and cost the long-term success of the company. So understanding momentum is key, but having that long-term play, I see guys that have been, in business 5 or 6 years, and they think that it should be easier. They think that they should be further along than they are. They think that their team should just know and understand what they need to do without being led.
That's hilarious.
It's hilarious, but it's very unfortunate because you have to understand that the long-term game, the sustainability, is a constant evolving recipe. It's not a plug and play and leave alone method at all.
Right.
No. And then so people start to create justification, right? They start to alter their narrative that, well, if I was in a different industry, it would be easier. Or if we were in a different location, it would be easier. Or if the real estate was cheaper, it would be easier. And I'm like, there's no simple business.
No. And it's all way harder than you think it's going to be, even if you know it's going to be hard. By the way.
Always. Always. And
yeah. And see, that stuff comes from the same people who get frustrated when they come home, and they get frustrated with their spouse because their spouse expects them to know to do something that they don't know they need to do. It's the same exact thing. But then you go to your freaking job and you expect your people to know exactly what you want them to do without you leading them. You're a friggin' idiot.
Well, no. I'm gonna repeat a word that you used when we were off recording, when we were discussing. We were just sharing stories and stuff, and the word you used is weak.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with that. I think that weak people will constantly look for an out. They will constantly fabricate a nicer, newer, better scenario somewhere else. And it gives them justification to leave. Here's the poor side of this, and this is why I agree with the term weak, is it creates the perception that you're excusing accountability. All right. So when you're willing to just jump ship, right? When you're willing to give up, and I talk about the difference between failure, quitting, and giving up. When you're willing to give up, because you have created this internal narrative that this is supposed to be fucking easy, that this is supposed to be better, that a different market, a different industry, a different team, a different whatever. You start to justify your own excused accountability, which means if you're willing to give up, you're willing to basically shit on everybody that helped you get where you are. Yeah. And it's really hard to repair burned bridges.
Right.
And then when you get to that fabricated destination, and you realize it requires the same effort, the same discipline, the same level of leadership. Well, now you've ostracized yourself.
Right.
And now you don't have a support team. And now it is really fucking hard.
Right. And in addition to that, if you are someone who has a tendency to give up, what I would say to counter that, or what I would ask is, who are you responsible for providing for? Most of the time, those people only provide for themselves. Most of the time. I'm not going to say all the time because I don't know. But I would chance a guess that the vast majority of them are by themselves. If you're willing to just give up, you clearly have no external push, which means you probably need someone to help push you. You need a reason to continue.
Yeah. Or you've been enabled before.
Or that, yeah.
right? Like you have people that you're accountable to, but
Right.
they've enabled, behavior.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Um,
Well, and in that case, well, I won't say that. You're the kind of person I don't like.
yeah. So getting into leadership, whether you're a business owner or not, which is why I focus on leadership development. Yes, I do business coaching, kind of as a as a compliment, if you will, to the leadership training. But if you're not willing to accept this, and you're not willing to fully understand and be introspective, and that was a word that I learned from you. If you're not willing to be introspective and honest, then you have no business being a leader.
That's right.
Because the quality of individual that it takes to be in leadership and create sustainability, I think is probably a similar statistic to what you're talking about. Andy Frisella says,
Mm-hmm.
You're 1% of the 7%.
Yeah.
And that can be a lonely game.
Mm-hmm.
The another point I want to make to what you were saying is because you were discussing the externals, right? Who are you accountable to? What are you accountable to? There's one internal that I think is very important as well. And if people are willing to give up, they are not their biggest fan.
Yeah.
Because if you are your biggest fan, if you show up for you,
mm-hmm.
and you commit to you and the things that you want and the impact that you want to make,
mm-hmm.
the death is a better option than giving up.
Right.
I mean, that's the reality. Yeah. It truly is. Like giving up is not even on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So and that goes back to what is that internal narrative? What is that internal justification? How introspective are you?
Right.
And I think you have to be your biggest fan. In you as an example, if you don't show up for you, you can't show up for your family.
Right. Yeah. And in addition to that, if you can't show up for yourself, you probably also don't realize that, as you say, you are both the problem and the solution to everything in your life.
Right. Okay. So if you're complaining about the top to bottom here, right? Okay. If you're complaining about the market, you're complaining about your business, you're complaining about your team, you're complaining about your personal relationships, you're complaining about your health, you're complaining about your finances, you're the problem.
Yeah. What are you doing to fix any of that?
There's only one common denominator in all of those examples.
Right. And by the way, if you get to that point, let me help you out. There's something that needs to be fixed. It needs to be you, and it needs to be right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't care where you get that help from, as long as they know what the heck they're doing.
But it's so easy to get wrapped up in the distractions too, right? Mm-hmm. Where you don't create that ability to be introspective. You get when I talked about in the episode "Stay the Course," where I talked about applying the 5 C's to yourself, and when people dreamcast and it turns to fantasy, and it's so easy to get wrapped up in that distraction, and it's easy to get wrapped up in the distraction of your own justification. And that's when you start feeling like you don't have to be accountable to yourself and you don't have to be accountable to other people. You're like, well, I'm just going to do what I want and you can accept it or not. It's like, okay, I can accept it, but I don't have to tolerate it.
Right.
And those are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And you can accept people, but you don't have to tolerate it. And so, then it comes like, okay, well, who's investing energy into you? Who are you investing energy to?
Mm-hmm.
It's, all of this is, and I love that we've kind of went down this rabbit hole, but it's all relevant to developing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because to lead anyone else, you have to lead yourself first.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. You have to develop yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not in front of them, you cannot pull them.
Yep.
You can't. You just can't do it.
Nope.
There's nothing else to be said about that.
No. Well, high turnover too, right? High performers don't work. They will not work for weaker leaders.
Yep.
So if you have a 7 or an 8 high performer on your team, you have to be an 8, an 8.1, an 8.2. You don't have to be a 10.
Right.
but you need to be a fraction better
Hmm.
as a
Yeah.
leader to be able to keep those high performers.
Mhm.
And if they're going to grow and evolve, you also have to grow and evolve.
That's right.
And an 8.5 will work for an 8.5.
Yeah. That dynamic is going to be different than if an
Mhm.
8.5 is leading a 6,
Of course.
but you can work together.
Absolutely.
Your number 2 guy cannot be a better leader than you, which means that you need to be a better leader.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean you need to pick a week or 2.
Right.
You need to be better.
You just need to improve yourself.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, man, all also relevant to growth and developing a business.
Mhm.
Where where are you going to end up the year at? Where do you think in business?
I should end up around $250,000 this year
Okay.
by myself.
Yeah.
So not too
And
bad.
I appreciate you sharing that because 18 months ago, you know,
Yeah.
you that wasn't even attainable.
No,
Um,
it wouldn't have even been a thought.
and by the way, you got to invest in a new plasma table recently.
Yeah. Uh huh. Brand new, by the way. Was able to get a loan from the bank to get it. So
Yep.
if that says anything about the drastic financial change
Mhm.
outside of all of the other stuff, the fact that a bank would loan me 30 grand
Yeah,
is saying something.
because they look at your financials.
Yeah,
It's not a
they have
handshake
them all
loan.
too.
Yep.
I'm not going to say that my relationship with the bank manager didn't help because it certainly did, but
It's relationships. What are the
everything.
5 or 6 people that I talk about constantly? Right? You've
Mhm.
got to have a banker, you've got to have a CPA, you've got to have an attorney, you've
Yeah.
got to have an insurance agent, you've got to
Mhm.
have a coach or a mentor, and if
Yep.
you're really at a point, your 6th person is you need a bookkeeper.
Mhm.
Right? Those are 5 or 6 people you need behind the scenes of a successful
Mhm.
company.
Right. And I have all of those, and that's the only reason why I can do the stuff that I do. That's the only way that you can be an owner operator and not work 100 hours a week
Hmm. I
because
appreciate that point.
you can't do all of that. And
Yeah.
by the way, you can't do all of that.
Hmm.
Just in case you're wondering, especially if you have a family,
Yeah.
you can't. Like my priorities are to be a husband, to be a dad, and then a business owner in that order.
Hmm.
Now, granted, I spend more time on the business because it's required. Because in order for me to continue to be the best husband and best dad I can be, I have to
Hmm.
provide for both of them.
The
But
quality of time that you spend with your family, though.
exactly, it's the quality of time. When you can't spend quantity,
Yeah.
the quality matters.
You were telling
So
me
put your
about
freaking phone away
right.
when you come home.
Well, you were telling me, like you walked into the door the other day because that little girl can
Hmm.
hear when you come home now, and it just
Hmm.
immediately throws her hands up in the air.
Yeah, and I'm covered in soot, so I can't
Right.
even grab her.
It's
So
and it's like, and I know that again, a lot of what we're sharing are based and revolve around conversations that you and I have had over a year and a half of working together, and it's about the intentionality
yeah,
and being purposeful. If
hmm
you're at work, be at work. If
yes,
you're at home, you're at home, and
hmm
you have to establish boundaries.
right,
Exception to the rule isn't the rule.
that's
Establish
right,
boundaries. You know that after, you know, starting at a certain AM time and ending at a certain PM time,
hmm
that most days are going to operate within those boundaries. I have
that's
very
right,
similar boundaries.
hmm
I don't talk to anyone about business before 7 a.m. unless it's
hmm
someone that I already work with, and
right,
I don't talk to anyone after 5:30 p.m. my time
hmm
because that's when I go to the gym.
yep,
And those are my boundaries.
hmm and those are good boundaries, by the way.
It,
If you don't have boundaries
mm,
like that, you you probably need to delegate more stuff. I'm not going to tell you exactly what you need to do because I don't know,
mhm,
but it's pretty likely you need to delegate something because like I have personal experience with people that I love and care for very much, and they have that exact problem. They will work and work and work and work and work, and then wonder why they have no relationship with anybody in their family.
mhm,
Well, when you're in a position where you are afforded the opportunity to delegate certain tasks to other people and you don't do that, it's on you.
Right. And so back to my point of being intentional, being purposeful.
Mhm.
If you're a young, and not by age, but if you're a new or young business owner, or maybe new in a leadership position,
Right.
you're going to need to go hard in the paint for a while.
Absolutely.
You're going to need to establish, those boundaries are going to look a little different because you need to say no to going out during the weekends. You need to say no to watching television. You need to say no to drinking. You need to establish different boundaries because you need to invest everything that you can. And it's crazy. And again, this is why I wanted to have you on here, because it proves this point.
Right.
You commit 1 year. You take everything else off of your table that you can.
Yeah.
You keep the 2 or 3 things that you need, and you get to work, and you hyper focus. What that year is going to do for you is going to set you up for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. But people want to play business owner, and they want to go do this, and they want to go to the, corporate's one thing, but they want to go to the gym in the middle of the day. Like, what are you doing?
You're in the trades. You don't get to do that.
No.
Come on, dude.
Set boundary. If you want to go to the gym at 4 or whatever in the morning or 4 at night, like, I don't care, but it's just amazing. Like, if people really understood, if they designated a single year early on, or even now, maybe now's a better time and they've been doing it for 20 years, dedicate a year. Say no to the bullshit. Say no to blowing money on expensive Christmas gifts. Say no to 1 year of a vacation. Do that for a year. And what that's going to do for you is set you up financially. It's going to help start the creation of sustainability. And it's going to really help you understand what your business is and who you are and who you need to be. It's just
exactly right.
Oh, man, it's amazing to me what people are like, oh, well, I didn't get that stuff done because I was doing this weekend. And I'm just like,
yeah. Well, but
what?
The answer to that question is prioritize and execute.
Yeah, that 100%.
What is the priority? Clearly, that person's priority is not growing their company.
Now, if you're going to
sting,
well,
but that's the truth.
Okay, so part of being a leader is setting clear expectations, charting the course, and communicating that. If you're going to dedicate a year, even if it's 6 months, I don't give a shit what it is. But if you're going to dedicate amount of time, you need to make sure that the people in your corner know what you're doing.
Right.
Right. So you need to make sure.
Don't back off of that either.
Right.
Because if they understand, they're going to understand. And by the way, just to clarify, that's exactly what I did. And I had 100% support of my wife. I told her, when you have our daughter, you will not have to go back to work. That was the goal. And I had I think it was 8 months at that point.
Right.
So we got to that point. Now, it was super, super tight financially at the beginning. And at this point, it's tight for a different reason.
Yeah.
But it's because I'm trying to keep the company sustainable, and everything costs 40% more than it did 6 months ago.
Yep.
But that's out of my hands.
Yep.
But we didn't take a vacation that we paid for. We took a long weekend. We went, and my parents paid for the room. All we did was pay for our food. We were down there with them. We didn't spend money on expensive stuff. She got we had to replace her vehicle, but it was $7,000.
Right.
We didn't go buy her some brand new Audi.
Wasn't 70.
It wasn't 70.
Yeah.
It was a $7,000 Toyota RAV4. Like, come on. It's 10 years old. When you understand that the growth of your company and where you want to be in the long term is more important than your short-term pain, that's when you're going to make change. And that's when you will prioritize what actually needs to be the priority, and you'll get rid of all the bull crap.
Yep. I think that is.
And by the way, when you're on the backside of that, you can add the bull crap back.
Yeah, you can have fun.
I didn't hunt. I didn't fish. I didn't play drums. I didn't build my Jeep for over a year. And now I get to do all 4 of those.
Yep.
Whenever I want. And I'm still focused on growing the company too.
Yeah. Well, but again, now you have systems in place where it's a little easier to manage, so you have the available
Right.
time to do those things.
Yeah. And that doesn't, by the way, that doesn't mean I dick off all day and just do fun stuff. It means I get a Saturday. I get my Saturdays back to do fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't stuff with the family.
What is this? Yeah, what is this shit? People think they have to have fun 7 days a week.
Dude, I don't get that. And why do people think that working and progressing yourself isn't fun? I enjoy that more than anything else.
Same, absolutely the same.
I know a lot of people think I'm crazy for that, but by the way, I have a really, really long way to go. We all do.
We all do.
Everybody does.
We all do. But I'm okay with being on that course, on that on that path.
I'll tell you what. I'm sure you could tell. I'm a lot happier than most of the people that aren't doing that.
Yeah. So this is the first time I've seen your face since June.
Several months.
Yeah.
We had a call because we were talking about getting more serious about bringing that guy on, and I was wondering what I needed to do to prepare myself and the company to be able to bring him on.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's being implemented.
Yep. Absolutely.
But that's a 6-month process.
Yep. And I can tell when the cameras came on, I could see it in your face how different you are from a year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you just I'm not trying to be all weird, but you look like you're happier, you look like you're in control.
Absolutely.
And to see that evolution in an individual who makes the decision to invest in themselves, commit, implement, and then keep going, it's pretty awesome to see. And I know that this is just the beginning of your 40-year journey, and which is exciting for me.
Yeah.
It's just
you'll be 400 by the
time.
Yeah,
I know. I'll be out back building an ark.
Freaking Josh is a vampire. Or Noah too.
I'm gonna officially change my name to Methuselah, and just go with it. But no, man, it's great to see you. It really is. I can't thank you enough for getting on here and sharing your story and adding value to people through real life examples that I believe is extremely relatable to guys like us and gals, that are in a similar situation. So, with that being said, is there anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, man, I'm just happy to have the opportunity to sit down and chat with you and add value where I can. When you said it's about time we do that interview, I was like, oh crap, what's he want to talk about? When you told me, I was like, okay, those are the 3 things that I think I'm okay at.
Yeah.
I could probably help a few guys out on that stuff.
I had told you, because you had sent me that message, like, hey, I just, I'm on the verge of closing this contract, and I used the sales process that I teach. And you were like, they didn't even, you went best, better, good, right? So you identified the want or need, you provided option-based solutions, and you presented it as a best, better, good in that order option. And they just discarded the lesser option. Yeah. And they were like, no,
they wouldn't even let me tell them the third one. They saw what was happening.
Yeah. They were like, no. So they went with what most people would consider to be the most expensive, but they went with the best option for them.
Yeah. Highest quality
solution. So when you sent me that, because I'd been thinking about this conversation for a while, and I'm like, okay, I feel like this is a really good time to share your story and have a conversation. Which we haven't had a long conversation in a while, and your wife used to laugh because our coaching sessions would exceed our normal times.
Exceed? They were 3 and 4 hours long.
That is true. That was also back.
Not an exaggeration.
It's not an exaggeration, and that's back when I could afford to spend 3 and 4 hours with someone, right? You were, I'm trying to think, and this is a true statement. I think you were either my second or my third full-time client.
I'll take second.
Battleborn Welding, off the table, not them.
Right.
But I think you were my second client. And so back then I could afford to spend 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
And yeah, we would bullshit and we got to know each other.
And when you gave me the schedule, it was all open.
It was. I was like, oh shit, I got somebody that actually wants to have a conversation.
Right.
Like, all right. And one of the lessons that I learned in the time that you and I spent together was single owner operator, I don't really need to meet with every week. Now, again, the reason you're on here is you're an exception to that rule because
it was a little different.
You implemented everything we talked about every week the entire time we worked together.
Usually within 24 hours.
Usually. Yeah, I got an email. I'm like, good God. But most people need that time to evaluate and implement.
Yeah.
And then look at the result. And then we strategize. So I really steer single owner operators away from the monthly unlimited now. Now, if they came to me and they were in the same situation that you were in, which was
that's different.
I was like, okay, let's invest and let's go full steam ahead because you were 2 weeks from closing your doors.
Right. Well, and in addition to that, at that point, I was it was 3 or 4 years into doing the self-development stuff. Period.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're already in that mode and you understand how to be introspective and you understand how to prioritize and what you need to do, when you have someone to say, okay, well, here's where you're messing up. Here's how you need to change it. Let's see get to work. It's easy to do it really fast. We could have had a coaching session every 3 days.
Yeah, also true.
I would have gone broke if we did that.
Yeah. Also true. And it's funny. And I know you were the second client now that I'm thinking about it because what the monthly unlimited cost back then is hilarious to me now.
Yeah. So I don't even remember what it was. I think it was $400 a month or something.
$5. I think it was $5.
It was low.
Yeah.
Whatever it was low.
It was low. Yeah. It was $500 a month for weekly coaching. That's not available now.
No. And it was, and your intended price was $500 a month for an hour a week.
Right. Yeah.
We talk for 4.
60 to 90 minutes, right? My goal is 90 minutes. Sometimes I exceed to 2 hours. I always block out 2 hours for clients. My goal is 90 minutes because I know the amount of information that we can go through in 90 minutes and then create a strategic plan for that week or 2 weeks or month moving forward. We can do it in 90 minutes.
Right.
If we, if you want to bullshit for 10 or 15 minutes like that, I get that. That's fine too. But once we exceed 90 minutes of like business strategy, we both start like glazing over and I'm like, all right, we gotta move on here. But
yeah. But dude, there was, and I enjoyed it also with us getting to talk every week, getting to see you transition from the home office in the garage where it was clearly very cold to where you are now in your office of intimidating color scheme with the Ring camera light and the nice mics and all that stuff.
Hey man, don't make fun of my OnlyFans light.
Only feet.
Only feet.
It's only feet.
Only feet. Yeah, that thing's a beast. It's all the proper downlighting for me.
Yeah.
No, but that makes me laugh because the office was a cockpit. It was. This is not an exaggeration because you're 100% right.
It was awesome. You could touch both walls.
I could sit at my desk and put my arms out and touch both walls because
you could reach up and grab my binder and it goes thump on the table.
My office
it's like a Bible.
was 6 feet wide by 8 feet long. It was 6 by 8. It was 48 square feet
and 60 inches tall. So you had this.
And yes, it was. I had basically just walled off a section of the garage, and there was no heat or air conditioning or anything out there.
And every now and then, your dog would join us, which was fun.
Yep. But part of that it's part of that growth, and because we're on virtual, like you can see most of the studio now and what we've got set up. So I too
The
have got to
lighting's much
experience.
better. It doesn't shine so bad off your
Oh man,
head.
it's so true. And we are getting ready to start re-recording almost all of the toolbox videos. Because some of them, so my office was in the garage, so I had that cockpit in the garage, and I had a single black painted wall in the spare bedroom, and one of those 36-inch notepads that I would write on and tear off.
I remember that.
Yeah, hey man, you got to
It
fuck with
works,
the dick
man.
you got, and that's
right.
and
That's right.
and that that's where we were at, and it was we've had the opportunity and been very fortunate that that we have this now, and I feel like it's only fair that I owe it to people to upgrade the videos and to re-record and add more value. And the other cool thing is I get to add more information now, because some of the information in there early on has evolved.
Yeah.
Since then, so we're gonna
and it will. You've gotten better.
I like to think that I've gotten better, and that's not being braggy. That's being like introspective. And the conversations are better. I'm developing a whole onboarding process for unlimited clients now to expedite that growth.
Right.
And so everything is getting better and better. And so because as you can see on my left here, we've got the black glass wall, and that's where all the toolbox videos are recorded and going to be recorded. So a lot of different changes coming up. The merchandise is coming out, and we're trying to have that out by the end of November, which is pretty cool because I'm getting a lot of messages. People want that for Christmas. They want to buy some merch, and so we're trying to
I'm afraid of some of the messages that you've gotten for item requests.
So about this sandpaper thing, you often bring up. Oh yeah, lithium battery, baby, lithium battery. So yeah, man, a lot of cool things going on. But if I'm being honest, the people that were on the episode with you on 103 was Pat and Mary with Authentic Roofing. Authentic Roofing was the first company that invested in me, and you were the second. And it's pretty awesome getting to see because they graduated out of the coaching as well, and getting to see where you guys are at and what that's afforded me to do, and to be able to serve more people and reach a wider audience. So it's pretty awesome that you and I get to have this conversation, and the conversations that we're going to have in the future moving forward. So well, dude, how do people find you on Instagram? You still doing the Instagram, or did you shut it down again?
I mean, I don't post anything.
Okay. Well,
most of the stuff that I do is proprietary or NDA. So,
yeah, I understand.
I just there's no point. I get on there to send Coleman stupid crap.
Well, what is it in case someone wants to reach out to you?
It's at RND Fabworks.
Okay.
Because my company is R&D Fabworks, and I'm in Kentucky, so I can get away with that.
Yeah. I'll also put it in the show notes. So find him at R&D Fabworks. I'm on Instagram at The Tradesman Experience. Email is thetradesmanexperience@gmail.com. The website's thetradesmanexperience.com, and the YouTube channel is The Tradesman Experience. Garrett, thank you so much for being here, brother.
It's good to see you again, brother.
All right, guys, get out there, get shit done. Be proud to be a tradesman. See ya.